Get out of my brother's house, you little gold digger, or I will drag you out myself. Connor's older brother, Derek, screamed it directly into my face in front of every single person at our housewarming dinner. His wife, Pamela, stood 2 steps behind him, arms crossed, smiling like she had just won something. Connor sat at the head of the table I bought, in the chair I picked out, in the house that had my name and only my name on every single document in the county recorder's office. He said nothing. He reached for his wine glass, took a slow sip, and stared at the centerpiece. That was the moment I understood that my husband had been lying to his entire family about who we were. I did not cry. I did not throw a plate. I am a logistics officer in the United States Army. I have coordinated supply drops under mortar fire in 108-degree heat. I have managed fuel lines for an armored brigade across 3 forward operating bases simultaneously. I do not break under pressure. I redirect it. I set my linen napkin on the table with 2 fingers, perfectly folded. I stood up. I looked at Derek, then at Pamela, then at the 11 other people sitting around my dining room table eating the food I prepared. Not a single one of them said a word in my defense. I looked last at Connor. He finally met my eyes. His were begging me silently, pathetically to swallow it, to smile, to let it go for the sake of the evening. I walked to the front closet, took my car keys off the hook, and drove away while Derek was still yelling at the door. He had no idea that in less than 12 hours, everything Connor had told them was going to collapse. The parking lot of the 24-hour diner on Route 9 was half empty. The fluorescent sign above the entrance buzzed and flickered in the October dark. I pulled my truck into the far corner spot, cut the engine, and sat in the silence. The leather seat creaked when I shifted. My hands were still locked on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. I made myself let go, finger by finger. I looked at my phone. 14 missed calls from Connor, 3 from Derek, 1 from Pamela. 0 from any of the 11 witnesses who sat there and watched it happen. I opened my messages. I typed Connor's name. I stared at the empty text field for a long time. Then I put the phone face down on the passenger seat, went inside, and ordered black coffee. I sat in the corner booth near the window. The vinyl seat was cracked and patched with electrical tape. The coffee tasted like it had been sitting since noon. I did not care. I wrapped both hands around the mug and let my mind go back to the dinner table. Derek had been building to that moment for months. He was 41 years old, chronically unemployed, and deeply resentful of anyone who had something he did not. Connor worshipped him the way younger brothers sometimes worship men who peaked in high school and never found another mountain to climb. Every Sunday, Call with Connor's family ended the same way: Derek's name mentioned 8 times, Connor's twice, mine 0. Derek had opinions about how I kept the house. Derek had opinions about the neighborhood I chose. Derek thought Connor should have more of a say in the finances. Derek thought it was strange that the mortgage was in my name alone. He was not wrong to find it strange. He was wrong about what it meant. The house on Mercer Lane was purchased 11 months ago with $284,000 in cash. That money came from a trust my grandmother, Ruth Callahan, established the year she was diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's. She spent 40 years working as a civilian contractor for the Department of Defense, wore the same pair of shoes until the soles separated, and refused to take a vacation because she was saving every dollar she ever made for the people she loved. When she passed, she left me everything, with one condition written directly into the trust language: the funds could not be commingled with marital assets. Her attorney was very specific. The house, the truck, and the investment accounts funded by that inheritance were mine, solely and separately, protected by law and by the woman who raised me to stand up straight. Connor knew this before we married. He signed a prenuptial agreement that outlined it in plain language. He had smiled, kissed my forehead, and told me he loved that I was so organized. What he did not tell me was that he had never explained any of this to his family. Instead, somewhere between our wedding and that housewarming dinner, he had let them believe, or actively helped them believe, that he was the one carrying us financially, that the house was his project, that I was, as Pamela once put it at Easter, along for the ride. I found this out the way I find out most things. I paid attention. 6 months into the marriage, Derek mentioned, "The mortgage Connor is managing." I let it pass. 4 months later, Connor's mother referred to Connor's beautiful house on a video call. I noted it. 3 months after that, Pamela asked me sweetly, with the smile of a woman who already knows the answer, whether I plan to go back to work now that Connor has things handled. I did not correct any of them. I assumed Connor would. He never did. My coffee had gone cold. I flagged down the waitress for a refill and pulled out my phone. I texted Connor once. A single line. I need you to tell me the truth about what you've been telling your family about this house and our finances. Tonight, before you go to sleep. I watched the screen. The message delivered. 1 minute passed. 2, 5. The word delivered sat there like a stone. I turned the phone over. I finished my second cup of coffee. I left a 20 on the table and drove home. Connor was in the kitchen when I walked in. He was still in his dinner clothes, leaning against the counter, and he had the expression of a man who had rehearsed a speech and already knew it was insufficient. "You embarrassed me in front of my whole family," he said. I set my keys on the hook. I turned around. "I want to hear you say out loud," I told him, "exactly what you've told them about this house." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I just let them think it's not that big of a deal, Nora. You know how Derek is. If he found out the house was yours, he'd never let me hear the end of it. He already thinks I married up." "What did you tell them, Connor?" "I said we bought it together." He said it fast, like speed would make it smaller. "I told them we split it. I said we were partners on it." "And my trust fund? My grandmother's money?" He looked at the floor. "I didn't mention it." "Did you tell them about the prenup?" The pause lasted 3 full seconds. That was my answer. "Connor." My voice dropped to the register I use when I am giving a final order, and I am not asking twice. "Derek called me a gold digger in my own dining room, in a house that is legally, solely, and entirely mine, while you sat there and let him. He didn't mean it like, don't." I held up one hand. "I'm not asking you to defend him. I'm asking you to look me in the eye and explain why you let your family spend the last 11 months believing a lie that puts me at the bottom of this marriage." Connor opened his mouth, then he closed it. His jaw worked silently like a machine without fuel. I walked upstairs. I took a shower. I set my alarm for 0600. I went to sleep. The next morning, I called Catherine Moore. Catherine is a family law attorney based in Raleigh. She is 53, drives a 10-year-old Volvo, and has the demeanor of a woman who has heard every version of every story and is never surprised by any of them. I hired her 2 years before the wedding to draft the prenuptial agreement and to establish the trust protections. When I called her that morning, she picked up on the second ring. "Tell me where you are," she said. "Home. He's still here. No immediate threat. No emergency. I need you to send him something formal today. A notice. Something that makes clear in legal language he can't misinterpret exactly what he owns in this marriage and what he doesn't." "I'll have it drafted by noon," Catherine said. "You want it delivered to the house?" "I want it delivered to his office. I want him to open it at his desk." "Done. Anything else?" "Pull the prenup and the trust documents. I want a full asset summary in my hands by end of day. And Catherine." I paused. "Find out if there are any accounts I haven't looked at recently that I should." There was a brief silence on her end, the kind that means she already has an instinct she isn't ready to state as a fact. "I'll start pulling records this morning," she said. The notice arrived at Connor's office at 12:47 p.m. I know the exact time because he called me at 12:49. "What is this?" His voice was tight, high at the edges. "Nora, what did you do?" "I protected myself," I said. "I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of the base commissary. I kept my voice flat and level. The document you just received is a formal declaration of separate property. It restates the terms of the prenuptial agreement you signed. It clarifies that the house on Mercer Lane, both vehicles, and all accounts ceded by the Callahan Trust are solely mine. It also requests that you stop misrepresenting those assets to third parties, including your family. You sent this to my office. You had 11 months to tell them the truth." A long silence. I heard him breathing. "Derek is furious," he finally said. "He called me this morning. He wants a family meeting. He's saying you're hiding assets. He's saying you're controlling me." I watched a woman load groceries into her car across the lot. She had a toddler on her hip and a phone balanced between her ear and her shoulder. She looked exhausted. She looked capable. "Connor," I said, "let me ask you something. When Derek was screaming at me last night when he called me a gold digger in the house my grandmother's savings built, what was your plan? What were you going to do when it eventually fell apart?" The silence this time was different. Hollow. I thought you could handle it. You always handle it. You don't let things get to you like normal people do." Something cold and precise moved through my chest. He had watched his brother humiliate me. and he had calculated, in real time, that I was strong enough to absorb it. He had used my self-discipline as permission to do nothing. My ability to stay calm under fire was not something he admired. It was something he exploited. "I'm going to need you to stay somewhere else this week," I said. "Nora." "Connor, I need you to stay somewhere else this week." He stayed at Derek's. That was where Catherine's second call found me, sitting on my back porch at 8:15 in the evening, watching the last of the October light drain out of the sky. "I found something," she said. "How's your stomach? Tell me." "The joint checking account. The one where your BAH gets deposited alongside his salary. My basic allowance for housing. The monthly stipend the Army deposits because I maintain a residence off post. It was not a large amount, $1,340 a month, but over the 14 months since we'd opened the joint account, it added up." "Pull it up," I said. "I'm looking at it now." I heard the soft tap of her keyboard. 31 transfers, all under $500, all labeled household expenses. "Nora, in the last 14 months, just over $9,200 has moved from that joint account into a secondary account you are not a signatory on." I stood up from the porch chair. The wooden boards were cold through my socks. "Whose name is on the secondary account?" "Connor's. And Derek's." The night air was very still. A single car passed on the street in front of the house. I watched the headlights sweep across the front yard. "Derek hasn't had consistent employment in 3 years," Catherine continued. "Connor has been depositing money into a shared account with his brother and pulling it out in cash. The paper trail suggests Connor has been quietly funding Derek's rent, Derek's car payment, and based on 2 transfers I can match to dates Pamela's credit cards." I thought about Derek at the dinner table. The new watch he wore, the way Pamela talked about their recent weekend trip to Asheville, the confidence of people who are spending money they haven't earned. "He was paying for all of it with my housing allowance," I said. "That's what the records suggest," Catherine confirmed. "You want me to move on this?" "Separate my direct deposits first. Everything the Army sends goes to a sole account, effective immediately. Then freeze the joint account. Then draft the formal separation paperwork." "Already started," she said. "Nora, he's going to call you when the freeze hits." "I know. Do you want to talk tonight? I can clear my evening." "No," I said. "I want to pull the last 14 months of statements and do the math myself. I'll have everything ready for you in the morning." The transfers totaled $9,240. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a red pen and went through every single line. Some of them were obvious. The memo field said things like D-Rent May and car insurance bro. Some were labeled simply MISC or household, which is how you hide a crime when you are not particularly creative about it. He was not stealing from a stranger. He was stealing from his wife's military pay, the allowance the government gives you to live in a home that is stable and safe, to quietly bankroll his brother's lifestyle, while his brother publicly called that same wife a parasite. I stayed up until 2 in the morning. I drank 3 cups of coffee. I went through the statements twice. When I was done, I took the legal pad to the scanner on my desk, scanned every page, and emailed the file to Catherine with a subject line that said, "Full accounting, ready to proceed." Then I went to sleep. Catherine filed the formal separation agreement the next morning. The joint account freeze triggered at 9 a.m. Connor called at 9:04. He did not yell. That surprised me. His voice was very quiet, which was somehow worse. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Since last night. I was going to pay it back, Nora. I swear to God. Derek is behind on everything right now, and I couldn't just watch him." "You couldn't watch your brother struggle," I said. "So you took money out of the account that holds my military pay and gave it to him without telling me, while his wife called me a leech at your mother's birthday dinner. While he spent the last year letting everyone believe I was a burden you were graciously carrying." A long, ragged exhale on his end. "You should have asked me," I said. "If your brother needed help, you should have come to me and asked. We could have had a conversation. We could have made a decision together. Instead, you decided that what I didn't know wouldn't hurt me. You decided my money and my opinion didn't matter as long as the outcome served your family." "I know." His voice broke at the edges. "I know, Nora." "I want you to call Derek today," I said. "On speaker with me on the line. I want to hear you tell him the truth, all of it. The house, the trust, the prenup, the transfers. I want to hear you say it out loud to his face." A long silence. "And if I don't?" "Then Catherine files the criminal referral for the $9,240 $200 by end of business. The call to Derek happened at noon. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone on speaker. I had a cup of coffee and the legal pad in front of me. I did not say a single word during the entire call. I did not have to. Connor talked for 11 minutes. He explained the house. He explained the trust. He explained the prenuptial agreement. He explained in a voice that started steady and dissolved completely by the third paragraph, the transfers from the joint account. When he got to that part, Derek went so quiet I thought the call had dropped. "You've been taking her military pay," Derek said finally. It was not a question. I was going to pay it back. "Connor." Derek's voice had changed. The bluster was entirely gone. What was left sounded like a man sitting down very suddenly and very hard. "You told me you were putting in equity on the house. You told me you'd built a portfolio with her. You told Mom that you were the primary earner. I know what I told you." I stood in her dining room. Derek stopped. I could hear him breathing. I called. The silence that followed lasted a long time. "I need you to fix this," Derek finally said. His voice was very flat. "I don't know how, but I need you to fix it. Because I cannot be the man who did that to her." Catherine filed the separation paperwork that afternoon. Connor moved his remaining things out over the weekend. He did not make a scene. He did not try to claim anything. He packed 2 bags and the coffee maker he'd brought from his old apartment, and he left the key on the counter by the door. That should have been the hardest part. It wasn't. The hardest part came 3 days after he left, when I was sitting at the desk in my home office and my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, and I almost let it go to voicemail, but I picked up. Nora. It was Pamela. I said nothing. "I know you have no reason to talk to me," she said. Her voice was careful and very tired. "Derek told me everything last night. The whole thing. I was up until 4 in the morning. What do you need, Pamela?" A long pause. "I want to apologize. And I know that probably doesn't mean much right now, but I need to say it. What I called you, how I talked about you. I believed what Connor was telling us, but that doesn't excuse what I said. I was cruel to someone who had never been anything but decent to me, and I need you to know that I know that." I looked out the window at the backyard. The oak tree at the corner of the yard had dropped half its leaves. They were piled against the fence in wet orange layers. "How is Derek taking it?" I asked. "Hard." A short, exhausted exhale. "He can't stop thinking about what he said to you. He asked me if he should call you, and I told him he should write a letter first. Give you the choice whether to open it." "That's good advice." "Nora," she hesitated. "Can I ask you something? Why didn't you just correct us? When we said those things, when we assumed, why didn't you just show us the documents?" I thought about that. About the year of small moments I had absorbed in silence. About how I had told myself that my restraint was dignity. That staying quiet was strategic. That eventually Connor would do the right thing. "Because I kept waiting for my husband to tell the truth," I said. "And every time I waited instead of speaking, I was teaching him that he didn't have to." Pamela was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," she said again, and this time she didn't qualify it. 2 weeks later, I walked into Dr. Sasha Webb's office for the first time. Not couples counseling, I was not ready for that, and I was not sure I wanted it. This was for me. Dr. Webb was 40-something, wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and had a way of asking questions that felt less like therapy and more like a very patient cross-examination. I liked her immediately. In our 3rd session, she asked me about the night of the housewarming dinner. "When Derek screamed at you," she said, "what were you protecting by walking away silently instead of correcting him on the spot?" I started to say my dignity. I stopped. "The peace," I said. "Connor would have been humiliated. It would have made everything worse." "Whose peace?" Dr. Webb asked. "His or yours?" I opened my mouth and closed it again. "You spent a year watching people disrespect you in your own home," she said, not unkindly. "You called it discipline. You told yourself it was tactical. But Nora, who was the discipline serving?" The question sat in the air between us like something physical. "I made it easy for him," I said quietly. "You made it invisible," she corrected. "Invisible doesn't mean easy. It means he never saw the cost. And if he never saw the cost, he never had a reason to stop." I had survived forward operating bases. I had managed crises that most people will never experience. I had built a financial foundation from scratch, using money my grandmother worked 40 years to save. And in my own home, in my own marriage, I had done the one thing a good soldier is never supposed to do. I had absorbed fire and filed no report. I held that for a long moment in the quiet of Dr. Webb's office. I taught him the floor, I said. Every time I didn't say something, I was telling him where the bottom was, and he adjusted. Yes, Dr. Webb said. He did. Connor's promissory note for $9,240 was signed and notarized 6 weeks after the separation was filed. He paid the first installment 3 days early. He called to tell me it was sent, not to negotiate or to ask for anything, just to let me know. I thanked him. I hung up. 3 months into the separation, I went to the commissary on a Tuesday morning. I was in the cereal aisle, comparing labels the way my grandmother taught me unit price, not package price when someone said my name. I turned around. It was Connor's mother, Diane. She was holding a handbasket with a carton of eggs and a bunch of bananas in it. She looked smaller than I remembered. She had not been at the housewarming dinner. She had been traveling. She had missed the whole thing. I heard, she said. Just that. I heard. I figured, I said. Diane had always been quiet in the way that mothers of difficult sons sometimes are not passive, but careful. She chose her moments. My boys grew up watching their father take credit for everything I built, she said. She was looking at the cereal boxes, not at me. I thought I was keeping the peace. I thought I was protecting them from a hard truth. What I was actually doing was teaching them that that's how a family works. She paused. I am sorry, Nora, for what Derek said. For what Connor let happen. Some of that is on me, and I know it. I looked at this woman, standing in the fluorescent light of the commissary with her eggs and her bananas, offering me something true and undefended. I appreciate you saying that, Diane, I told her. We stood there for a moment. Then she put a box of oatmeal in her basket and walked away. The formal divorce hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning. Connor and I both arrived early. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom hallway, on identical wooden benches, like strangers sharing a gate at the airport. He looked at me across the corridor. I keep trying to figure out when I decided to become that person, he said. The lying, the all of it. I can't pinpoint it. It doesn't usually have a single moment, I said. I thought I was protecting my pride. He shook his head. I was just protecting a story I wanted to be true. The bailiff opened the courtroom door. We went in. Catherine handled everything. The proceedings were efficient, cold, and final. The judge reviewed the prenuptial agreement, reviewed the asset declarations, and signed off in under 40 minutes. The house on Mercer Lane remained solely mine. The vehicles remained solely mine. The $9,240 promissory note remained in force. We walked out of the courthouse into a gray November morning. Take care of yourself, Connor, I said. He nodded. He did not try to hug me. He walked to his car. I watched him go. I drove home on the interstate with both hands on the wheel. The bare trees along the median looked like they were reaching for something just out of range. I thought about my grandmother, Ruth Callahan, who worked 40 years to save a fortune so that the women she loved would never have to ask permission to leave. I thought about how she sat across from me when I was 19 years old and made me memorize a single sentence. Your discipline is your power, baby girl, but only if you spend it on yourself. I had spent a year spending it on someone else's comfort, on someone else's story, on the exhausting project of keeping a peace that was never real. I pulled off the interstate at my exit. I turned onto Mercer Lane. The oak tree in the backyard had dropped the rest of its leaves. The yard was covered in them, deep and soft and copper gold. I parked in my driveway. I sat for a moment in the quiet of my truck. Then I got out, went to the garage, and found the rake. I spent the next 2 hours working the yard alone, moving through the November cold with the kind of steady, purposeful effort that my grandmother would have recognized. By the time I finished, the light was going gray at the edges and my shoulders ached in the good, honest way that comes from work that is simply work, with no performance and no audience. I looked at the yard, clean lines, cleared ground. I went inside. I bolted the front door. I made coffee the way my grandmother taught me, strong, black, no shortcuts. I sat at my kitchen table in the quiet of the house that belonged to me, and I finally stopped swallowing fire. If you have ever stayed quiet when you should have spoken, not out of fear, but out of love for someone who was using your silence against you, I need you to hear this. Your patience is not invisible. It leaves a mark on every person who learns they can get away with it. You taught them the floor. That means you can also raise it. Hit that like button and subscribe if this story reached you somewhere true. And go down to the comments right now. Tell me the moment you stopped being someone else's shock absorber. I read every single one.